Welcome to my story. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe, and your support means the world.
Zuri Okafor's heart was racing with excitement as the plane touched down in Cape Coast. She had decided to cut her Lagos trip short, eager to surprise her husband Tay Mensa for the holidays. The thought of seeing his face light up, of cozy dinners and laughter echoing through their home, made her chest tighten with joy. She pictured them sitting together in their luxurious penthouse in Accra, the city lights shimmering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of wine in hand, reminiscing and reconnecting after months apart. For weeks she had imagined this moment, the festive decorations she had secretly bought, the little treats she planned to bake, the quiet evenings they would spend talking about dreams and plans. It all felt so perfect in her mind. Zuri loved with her whole heart and she trusted Tay completely. Yet, in the back of her mind, there had been little cracks she had tried to ignore. His phone calls had grown shorter, distracted. Messages she sent were often left unanswered or brushed off with distant words. Sometimes she sensed a coldness in his voice that hadn't been there before. But she shook off the doubts, telling herself it was just stress, work pressure, nothing more. As she stepped out of the cab and looked up at the gleaming penthouse steps, her suitcase in hand and a wide smile on her face, Zuri felt a surge of anticipation. She had no idea that the moment she opened the door, the life she thought she knew was about to shatter, and everything she believed in would be challenged in ways she could never imagine. Zuri swung open the penthouse door, expecting the warm, familiar glow of lights, the smell of spices and baked treats, the sound of laughter filling the apartment. Her heart leapt with excitement, imagining Tay jumping up from the couch, wrapping her in his arms, telling her how much he had missed her. But the moment she stepped inside, the scene that greeted her froze her in place. Tay sat rigidly in the middle of the living room, his usual charm nowhere in sight. Beside him, a sharply dressed lawyer arranged a stack of papers on the glass table. The air felt heavy, tense, unfamiliar. The lawyer looked up at her, voice calm but firm. "Zuri, we need you to sign these documents." Zuri's hand shook, her pulse hammering in her ears. She blinked, hoping it was some kind of misunderstanding, a joke, anything but the reality she was staring at. Tay didn't meet her eyes. He sat there, unervingly calm, as if he were waiting for her to process the blow he had carefully planned. She took a step closer, her mind racing. The papers were divorce documents, but there was more. Financial agreements that stripped her of her stake in the company they had built together, the business she had poured her heart, her time, and her money into. Every memory of late nights, every crisis she had handled, every ounce of support she had given him flashed before her eyes. Shock and disbelief twisted in her chest. How could he do this? After everything? She searched his face, desperate for some sign of remorse, some explanation, but found nothing, just cold calculation. The betrayal cut deep, sharper than anything she had ever felt. As she stood there, frozen, a sinking realization hit her. This wasn't a sudden, impulsive act. This had been planned, methodical. Every distant call, every dismissive message, every subtle shift she had ignored, they had all been part of a scheme she hadn't even begun to suspect. The life she thought she knew, the love she trusted, was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. And now Zuri understood she had just walked straight into the trap. Zuri slammed the bedroom door behind her, the sound echoing through the quiet penthouse. She leaned against it, chest heaving, hands trembling, trying to catch her breath. Her heart was still pounding, and her mind raced with a storm of thoughts she couldn't control. The betrayal felt like a punch to her chest, leaving her dizzy and numb. She sank onto the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the floor, but memories kept flooding back. Long nights she spent helping Tay handle impossible client crises, phone calls at odd hours to calm panicked investors, the countless sleepless nights when she pored over business plans while putting her own dreams on hold. She remembered the times she had covered parts of his ventures financially, quietly ensuring everything stayed afloat while he took the spotlight. Tears pricked at her eyes, hot and heavy, but as the initial shock began to fade, something shifted inside her. The anger, the betrayal, the disbelief, they started to fuel something else. Clarity, focus, a quiet determination that had been buried under love and trust for too long. She wiped her eyes and straightened her back. "If they want war, I'll be the one to win," she whispered to herself, the words steady, almost cold. Her grief was still there, but it had transformed into strategy. Every sacrifice she had made, every risk she had taken, had given her tools and knowledge that they could never touch, if she used them wisely. Zuri reached for her laptop, opening it with deliberate calm. She glanced at the company accounts, her eyes scanning figures and assets she had quietly kept track of for years. Hidden offshore accounts, investments under her name, patents she had contributed to, everything she needed to protect herself, everything Tay thought he controlled was right there at her fingertips. For the first time since stepping into that living room, a small, sharp smile touched her lips. She wasn't helpless. Not anymore. She had the power, the knowledge, and now the plan. And Tay and his lawyer had no idea what was coming next. Zuri sat back in her chair, letting the weight of the moment settle, but unlike before, this time it didn't crush her. It sharpened her focus. She had always known that Tay and his lawyer thought she was naive, that she trusted too easily, that she would never fight back. What they didn't know, what they could never have guessed, was just how much power she quietly held. 4 years while Tay took the public credit for every success, Zuri had been building her invisible empire alongside him. She legally owned 40% of the company, completely protected by contracts and filings Tay had never even seen. Every tech patent she had helped develop, every expansion she had quietly funded, every strategic decision she had influenced under her name had cemented her stake. None of it was flashy or obvious. She had allowed him to believe he ran the show, while in reality she had quietly secured her position. And it didn't stop there. Zuri had a confidential offshore holding account, millions in her name, tucked away and shielded from prying eyes. Money that she had quietly diverted from investments, deals and company profits over the years. She had always been careful, meticulous, patient. The account was her safety net, her leverage, her shield, and now her weapon. The shock, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they still stung, but a clear plan had formed in her mind. She wasn't powerless. Far from it. Tay had assumed he could push her out, take everything they had built together, and she would do nothing. But he had gravely underestimated her. Zuri leaned forward, her fingers hovering over the laptop keyboard. She could protect herself legally, financially, and strategically. And she could make him regret every sneer, every lie, every move he had made thinking she was weak. The pieces were in place. All she needed now was to act, and she would act with precision, patience, and power. A small, confident smile crossed her face. For the first time since opening that door, Zuri felt completely in control. Tay thought he had the advantage, but she had the ultimate edge. Knowledge, ownership, and a secret he would never see coming. She wasn't just going to defend herself, she was going to win. Zuri settled into her home office, the city lights of Accra glittering behind her floor-to-ceiling windows. Her heart was calm now, steady, almost playful. She opened her laptop, the screen glowing softly in the dim room, and her fingers hovered over the keys. This was the moment she had been preparing for. The moment she would take the first step in reclaiming everything that was rightfully hers. With careful precision, she accessed the company accounts remotely. Every move was calculated, every click deliberate. She began transferring critical assets, intellectual property rights, and key shares into a trust she had legally set up under her own name. It wasn't just about protection, it was strategy. Anyone who tried to interfere now, including Tay and his high-powered lawyer, would risk throwing the entire company into chaos. She smirked at the thought. They had thought she was naive. They had thought she would fold. They had no idea. Almost immediately her phone started buzzing. Tay's frantic calls flashed across the screen. She let them ring, sipping her coffee slowly, enjoying the drama she had orchestrated without ever raising her voice. Then the lawyer's name appeared, threatening legal action, citing contracts and deadlines. Zuri laughed softly, a sound both calm and chilling, knowing full well their threats were empty against the airtight legal shields she had quietly built over the years. She responded to none of them immediately, letting the tension hang in the air. Every move she made was a silent message. She was in control. Every transfer completed, every asset secured, reinforced her position. Her mind raced ahead, already imagining the next steps, the confrontation that would come, the looks on their faces when they realized they had underestimated her. By the time she closed her laptop, the first strike was complete. She leaned back in her chair, calm and collected, almost playful, as if she had just finished a casual game. The audience could feel the tension crackling in the air. The legal battle was hers to win, but the emotional showdown, the moment where Tay would finally see her power, was just around the corner. And Zuri couldn't wait to face it. The next morning, the sun streamed through the penthouse windows, painting the breakfast table in golden light. Tay tried to act normal, arranging plates and pouring juice as if nothing had happened the night before. He laughed a little too loudly at a joke, gesturing casually to family members, trying to mask the panic brewing just beneath the surface. Zuri sat across from him, serene, composed, a polite smile on her lips as she sipped her coffee. She chatted lightly about the holidays, complimented the food and nodded at family stories, all the while letting Tay sweat quietly beside her. Every time she glanced at him, she caught the flicker of panic in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand twitched toward his phone. It wasn't long before the cracks started showing. His phone buzzed constantly, but every call he picked up ended with a brief, sharp word before he hung up, his face tight with confusion. Emails pinged relentlessly on his tablet. Numbers he expected to be in place were missing. Funds he thought were secure were gone. Zuri's silent calm contrasted sharply with Tay's unraveling composure. She let out a soft laugh, almost accidental, and said lightly, "You know, I always knew everything you were planning." Her words hung in the air like a trap, subtle but cutting. Tay froze mid-smile, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. He opened his mouth, closed it again, unsure how to respond. Even the lawyer sitting stiffly beside Tay was beginning to panic. Zuri's legal cover was airtight, every document, every account, every move perfectly aligned with the law. He fidgeted, whispered under his breath, and glanced nervously at Tay, realizing this was far from the simple, controllable situation they had expected. By the time brunch ended, Tay's smile had faded. He was pale, restless, and quietly furious, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend what had just happened. For the first time he realized the woman he thought he could manipulate, the wife he believed he had overpowered, was smarter than he had ever imagined. And in that moment the scales had shifted completely. Zuri was no longer just calm. She was untouchable, at least for now. Tay stormed into the penthouse with the lawyer right behind him, their faces tight with frustration and anger. They expected Zuri to cower, to beg, maybe even cry, but what they saw stopped them cold. Zuri was standing tall in the middle of the room, calm, composed, a small confident smile playing on her lips. Her posture radiated control, her eyes steady and unafraid. Tay's voice cracked slightly as he tried to regain authority. "Zuri, we need to talk. You can't just..." She cut him off, her voice clear, cold, and measured. "You underestimated me. That's your first mistake." The lawyer stepped forward, attempting to intimidate her with a wave of papers. "These contracts are still valid. You could be in serious trouble." Zuri's smile widened just a fraction. She walked closer to the table, her fingers brushing the documents casually. "Contracts," she said softly. "Let's talk facts. Here's the proof of ownership, the account records, the patents I contributed to, all under my name. Legally, everything I moved yesterday was completely within my rights." Tay's jaw tightened and the lawyer's confident stance faltered. Zuri wasn't the same woman they thought they knew. She was no longer the trusting wife who had quietly supported him for years. She was calculating, empowered, and unafraid. Every move she made now was precise, each word a calculated strike. The room grew tense, thick with the weight of silence. Tay's frustration simmered, but he realized he had no leverage, no control. The lawyer shuffled papers nervously, trying to find an angle, but Zuri's evidence and legal cover were airtight. Zuri took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the tension build before speaking again. "You thought I was powerless, that I would simply accept being pushed out. That was your second mistake. I don't lose. And you," she paused, letting her words sink in, "you are learning that the hard way." Neither Tay nor the lawyer spoke. Their attempts at intimidation had failed completely. Zuri's calm dominance filled the room, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind who was in control. The woman they tried to manipulate had become the one holding all the power, and the quiet, strategic smile on her lips made it clear. This confrontation was over before it even began. Zuri moved quietly but with purpose, contacting key company stakeholders one by one. Emails, calls, and messages confirmed her legal ownership, her contributions, and the recent moves she had made to secure the company. She didn't make a show of it, she didn't need to. Every message, every confirmation, was a silent but undeniable proof of her power. It didn't take long before the news leaked. Social media erupted, calling her the woman who outsmarted the billionaire. News outlets picked up the story, painting a picture of a brilliant, fearless woman who had turned betrayal into triumph. Memes, threads, and articles highlighted her strategic genius and calm courage. And soon even Tay's business partners were questioning him. How could they not? The man who had seemed untouchable now looked weak, overconfident, and foolish next to the woman he tried to deceive. Zuri watched it all unfold with a quiet smile. She had expected the shockwaves, the ripple effect, but seeing the world recognize her intelligence and strength was something else entirely. Every congratulatory message, every news story felt like a small victory, a personal vindication. The betrayal that had once left her heartbroken was now fueling her rise. She had played the long game, stayed patient, and finally the world was seeing her for the power she had always had. Even with the public recognition, Zuri wasn't done. This was just the beginning. She was already thinking ahead, planning her next moves, preparing her steps toward complete independence. A new office, new ventures, perhaps even her own tech philanthropy. She could feel the possibilities stretching out before her, limitless and exhilarating. As she looked out over the city skyline from her penthouse, coffee in hand, a sense of calm pride settled over her. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the years of silent work, they all culminated here in her rise. Zuri wasn't just winning, she was rewriting the rules, proving that intelligence, patience and courage could triumph over greed and deception. And now, the stage was set for her next act. A life built entirely on her terms, free, empowered, and unstoppable. Zuri took the final steps with quiet confidence. She filed for an amicable divorce, making it clear that there was no hostility, no drama, just clarity. Legally, everything was in her favor. She retained full ownership and complete control of the company, the empire she had quietly built and protected for years. There was no fight left for Tay. The power she had accumulated was untouchable and she intended to use it wisely. Once the divorce was finalized, Zuri made a bold move. She left Accra and relocated to a stunning penthouse in Sandton, Johannesburg. The view of the city's skyline from her balcony was breathtaking, a symbol of the fresh start she had earned. It wasn't just a change of address. It was a declaration of independence, a statement that her life, her future, and her empire belonged entirely to her now. In her new city, Zuri launched a philanthropic tech venture, combining her business acumen with her desire to create real impact. The company grew quickly, drawing attention for its innovation and social responsibility. Investors, partners, and media outlets took notice. Articles praised her intelligence, resilience, and the way she had transformed betrayal into triumph. Social media called her the woman who rebuilt everything, and she became a symbol of empowerment for women and entrepreneurs across Africa and beyond. Every achievement, every milestone, was a reminder of how far she had come. The audience could see her ultimate revenge, not in spite of her past but because of it. She had turned heartbreak into strategy, betrayal into opportunity, and deception into a showcase of her strength. Financially secure, emotionally liberated, and professionally unstoppable, Zuri's life had become a story of resilience and empowerment. As she stood on the balcony of her Sandton penthouse, watching the city lights shimmer, Zuri felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had taken control of her destiny, rewritten the rules, and created a life that reflected her true power. The past was behind her, the present was thriving, and the future was hers to shape. This was her victory, complete, strategic, and beautifully hers. 5 years had passed since the betrayal that had once shattered Zuri's world. Now she walked into the grand hall of an international business summit in Nairobi, Kenya, her presence commanding attention. Dressed in a tailored suit that radiated confidence, she carried herself with the quiet authority of a billionaire CEO whose achievements were admired across the globe. Cameras clicked, delegates whispered, and every eye in the room turned to her, not just because of her success, but because of the story of resilience and intelligence that had preceded her. As she approached the stage to deliver the keynote speech, her eyes briefly scanned the audience. There he was. His posture was stiff, his usual confident aura gone, replaced with a quiet, humbled presence. The man who had once tried to outmaneuver her now looked small, a shadow of the arrogance he had carried. She didn't glance down at him or speak a word. He didn't need to. The look in her eyes, the way she moved with calm authority, said everything. Zuri walked past him, her steps steady, each one a statement of triumph. The audience sensed it, the tension, the history, the silent vindication. She had transformed every ounce of betrayal into power, every moment of heartbreak into strategy. She had built an empire, earned global respect, and reclaimed her life on her own terms. Standing at the podium, Zuri took a deep breath, scanning the crowd that now hung on her every word. She began to speak, her voice strong, her message clear. And as she closed her speech, her final words lingered in the minds of everyone present. Some betrayals are meant to teach, others to show who the real power belongs to. The hall erupted in applause, but Zuri's gaze remained steady, calm, and victorious. The journey had been long, painful, and strategic, and now finally she had everything she had ever deserved: power, respect, and complete vindication.